Quantum Shift fired me after 6 years of building their core tech. Don't worry, your contributions won't be remembered anyway. As I gazed at the severance agreement I had just signed, the words lingered in Nathan's modern office. 6 years of 70-hour workweeks were boiled down to a contemptuous remark and a digital signature. Despite feeling my chest tighten, I kept a straight face. I got out of the chair and said, "Thanks for the opportunity." Completely professional. That's me, Senior Systems Engineer Eliza Tran. A former Senior Systems Engineer, indeed. 3 minutes ago. Our dynamic CEO, Nathan Cross, didn't even glance up from his laptop. Immediately following the receipt of our series of funding, floor-to-ceiling windows were constructed, allowing the San Diego sunlight to flood through his immaculately arranged hair. I helped start the business from the ground up, and I needed $10 million to scale it. I passed rows of engineers in the open office area who were unaware that I wouldn't be coming back tomorrow. Right now, a few of them were working on my code, which I had created over the course of many late nights. Code that served as the foundation for our whole product. When we were still operating out of that rundown warehouse downtown, without air conditioning, I created the bespoke system architecture. I would continue to code while perspiring profusely. "Are you leaving early?" Thomas cried out from behind his desk. A more recent hire. He didn't know what was going on. I answered with a smile that stopped short of my eyes, something like that. I hurriedly packed my personal belongings. Only a coffee mug, a little plant, and a framed picture of my sister's family were present. I could have all of my personal belongings in one canvas tote in 6 years. I had given this business everything else. A shiver ran up my back as I waited for the elevator. Nathan wasn't only mean when he said that no one would remember my contributions. It was incorrect. My fingerprints were on every line of its system architecture. The material was organized in a way that was specific to me, with brief remarks that only I could interpret. The thorough guide had been on my to-do list for 3 years, but I had never made it. Something more pressing was always present. There's always another fire to extinguish. The doors of the elevator opened. I entered. I got a final look at the office that had served as my second home as they closed. Then it dawned on me. They were genuinely unaware of what they had just done. I wasn't upset. Not quite yet. However, I became acutely aware of my worth and the exact position of every IP-related correspondence, version logs, and initial design drafts that contained my name. My father's failure cast a cloud over me as I grew up. In the 1990s, this genius inventor created a groundbreaking battery technology. He was fired and his name was removed from all press releases when his business went public. I swore I would never allow myself to experience that. However, I was only given a severance check and a non-disclosure agreement, which I had carefully read before signing, when I left Quantum Shift at the age of 29. Company secrets were covered by the NDA, but neither my personal documentation procedure nor the documents I purposefully forwarded to my own lawyer before entering Nathan's office were. 3 weeks ago, I had a feeling this would happen. The murmurs. The meetings behind closed doors. Nathan had begun introducing our investors to Troy, the new engineering consultant. I didn't have paranoia. I was ready. I contacted Morgenstern, my lawyer, on the way home. I merely stated, "I've been dismissed. They're bringing in a more experienced individual." Morgan spoke in a firm voice, "I see. And the package for severance?" 6 months of pay. Standard NDA. My job contract had all the information regarding intellectual property. Morgan murmured, "Smart girl," and I heard her smile. "The files you forwarded appear to be reliable. Tomorrow, let's get together to talk about our alternatives." I didn't have the usual desire to check my Slack messages or work email the following day. I slept till 9 a.m. instead. I prepared a healthy breakfast for the first time in years and drove with an odd feeling of lightness to Morgan's office. architecture diagrams, version control logs, emails that amply demonstrated my contributions, and, above all, evidence that I had developed the proprietary authentication system that set Quantum Shift's product apart in the market were all spread out on the conference table. Morgan remarked, "You've been meticulous. The majority of people don't document this way." I answered, "I learned to keep receipts from my father." "What are your plans for all of this, then?" She pointed to the proof of my 6 years of labor and questioned. I took a seat and thought about what I could do. I wasn't naturally vengeful. I wasn't brought up to seek retribution. However, I had been brought up to believe in my own value. Not yet, I concluded. However, I want to be prepared. Morgan nodded, fully comprehending. They will search for you. Once they recognize what they've lost, businesses like these always do. And will be ready when they do. I felt oddly calm as I walked out of her office. My time was mine for the first time in 6 years. And I was going to make good use of it. I was reading through job advertisements and enjoying an expensive cappuccino at a seaside cafe 3 weeks after I was fired when my phone rang. Quantum Shift CTO, Derek Miles, was visible on the caller ID. "Eliza," he remarked in an unduly cordial tone, "how are you?" "All right, Derek," I answered in a neutral voice. "How may I help you?" As they worked on the upcoming release, the team received several inquiries regarding some of your architectural choices. I hoped you might be available for a brief consultation. I sipped my coffee slowly. The word consultation was an intriguing one. I answered cautiously, "Given the circumstances of my departure, I'm not sure that would be appropriate." Derek cleared his throat. "See, Eliza, we're prepared to pay you for your time." Nathan might have made a snap decision. "Hasty," I said again without sound. "Is that the new name for it?" The line paused for a moment. "The paperwork is a little specialized." It nearly made me chuckle. Specialized was a tactful way of saying that the new crew couldn't understand my own shorthand at all. Yes, I had documented everything, but in a way that was based on my own reasoning and patterns. I answered calmly, "I'm afraid I'm quite busy at the moment." With his wealth of experience, maybe Troy can solve it. "Eliza," Derek started. "I hope the best for you, Derek." "Really?" I hung up the phone after that. He texted me right away, and my phone buzzed. "We can double the cost of your consultation. Please think again." Without responding, I put my phone down. Give them time to stew. One of the junior engineers I had mentored, Leo Park, sent me an email that evening while I was preparing supper. This was the subject line. "This is unbelievable." Leo had always been devoted to me and appreciative of my advice when no one else had time. The email was short. "Eliza. Here, everything is collapsing. Troy finds your authentication system confusing. Following the most recent deployment, 3 clients have reported serious problems. Nathan is accusing the engineering staff, although everyone is aware that this is due to their inability to comprehend your architecture. Derek is really freaked out. I just wanted to let you know. I miss you being here. Leo." I took a seat at the counter in my kitchen and gazed at the television. I didn't think everything would fall apart so fast. I had a slight worry for my former coworkers because, for the most part, they were decent individuals in a difficult circumstance. However, the first glimmer of satisfaction came from another part of me, the portion that recalled Nathan's smug dismissal. My phone rang once more. It was Morgan this time. "The legal department at Quantum Shift just called me," she added. "They already want to talk about a consulting arrangement." The speed at which things had progressed shocked me. With an intentionally subdued tone, Morgan said, "Apparently, they're having some technical difficulties." "What would you suggest?" I inquired. She said, "I suggest we give them a little more time to perspire. You will be in a better position the more desperate they become." I experienced a change as I hung up, a silent, indisputable knowledge that I was now in control. This was not an act of retaliation. It has to do with recognition of my labor, of my worth. And it appeared that acknowledgement was at last on the horizon. The calls increased in frequency by the fourth week following my termination. Derek, Troy, even Leo, making unofficial, almost contrite, appeals for assistance. I remained silent, giving evasive answers when I did respond. I was busy while they scrambled. I had arranged to meet with 3 rival companies. Not to find a job, but to learn about the market environment. To gain a better understanding of my area of strength. Nathan personally called on a sunny Tuesday morning, precisely 1 month after I had cleared my desk. "I think we got off on the wrong foot," he remarked, his voice strained as he tried to maintain its customary polished assurance. "I've been talking to the board about your departure, and we think there may have been a misunderstanding." "A miscommunication?" I reiterated, speaking in a bland tone. "What, precisely?" He said, "About your value to the company," but it was obvious that he found the words difficult to say. "To assist with the transition, we would like to have you return as a consultant." What if no one remembered my contributions? I nearly asked. However, I didn't. "I don't have to show my hand so soon." I stated calmly, "I'm not interested in consulting. But thank you for the offer." "Be sensible, Eliza. A substantial consulting fee of 6 figures for a few weeks of work is what we are discussing." I repeated what I had said to Derek earlier, "I'm pretty busy right now. I wish you luck in everything." Before he could answer, I hung up and contacted Morgan right away. I informed her, Nathan just called and offered a consulting position. 6 figures. As Morgan put it, they're becoming desperate. However, we must proceed with caution. "Have you been keeping an eye on their merchandise?" Yes, I had. The client-facing dashboard of Quantum Shift had been experiencing a lot of outages. With so many complaints, their Twitter help account was running non-stop. In the last week, the stock price, which had risen following the funding announcement, had fallen by 15%. "For them, things don't look good," I affirmed. "That's right," Morgan said. "I've been conducting my own research." "Were you aware that Nathan showed the investors your authentication system as his own invention?" I felt a chilling shock. "What?" "On their board, I have a contact. Nathan has apparently been claiming credit for your work for a long time. His vision was being funded by the investors, who were unaware that you owned the entire technical foundation." I shouldn't have been shocked by the revelation. However, it did. Ignoring me was one thing. Stealing credit for my work was another. This went above what I had expected. "What should we do next?" My voice hardened as I asked. Morgan suggested that we wait another week. Permit the situation to worsen. A formal notification of maintained intellectual property rights is then sent. Is that possible? Their employment contract was signed by me. Work performed within the parameters of your employment is covered by the contract. However, your unique authentication system, the one that distinguishes their product? Before you started working at Quantum Shift, you worked alone to create the first prototype. You can prove it with the old GitHub repository. As the impact of her words set me, I blinked and then slowly nodded. You refined it for their purposes, but you brought it with you, Morgan went on, but the core IP could be argued to remain yours. I had clear memories of those early days, coding late at night in my flat while my messy workstation was lit by a used monitor. Initially, the authentication system was a side project. A proof of concept. I was working on a more sophisticated, decentralized identity protocol concept. Quantum Shift hadn't even been invented yet. Nathan and I had discussed the project when I was hired. He had dismissed it as interesting but irrelevant, but now it seems that doing so could have serious consequences. I answered slowly, "So, we have leverage," the realization coming to me like a surprise morning. Morgan answered, more than leverage. If we pursue it, our legal claim has the potential to shut down their entire business. I took a big breath and sat back in my chair. I had left Quantum Shift feeling abandoned and helpless. Right now? I nearly felt terrible for them because the roles had been so completely reversed. Nearly. The situation at Quantum Shift had gotten out of control by the 5th week following my departure. Another 20% had been taken off their stock. Industry forums were rife with rumors of client departures. The frantic phone calls had completely ceased, a silence more sinister than the commotion that had before it. The doorbell rang while I was at home, cuddled up on the couch with my legs curled beneath me, watching a documentary. I froze when I opened the door. Camille Dawson, the principal investor from Threshold Ventures, was there on my porch. Ms. Whitaker, she said in a calm yet serious tone. I'm sorry for the last-minute visit, but this couldn't wait. Could I enter? I paused, then moved out of the way. Although Camille had always been friendly in investor meetings, we had never had a one-on-one conversation. She entered quietly and authoritatively, looked about the room, and then sat down on my couch. I'll be honest, she declared. Quantum Shift is facing difficulties. And I think you understand why. I've heard there are technical challenges, I said, picking my words carefully. Camille stared at me steadily and intently. She stated bluntly, the authentication system is failing. And no one can make it better. Nathan told us that redundancies were in place in case of important people exits, but that was obviously not the case. I said nothing. She wasn't done yet. She went on to say, what's more concerning is that we've found discrepancies in what we were told about the technical leadership of the company. Nathan claimed that you were only the implementation lead and that he was the architectural mastermind. She hesitated, then leaned a little closer. However, based on our observations, the opposite is true. Did he tell you that? I inquired. Camille said, it is. However, after reviewing the matter, our technical experts have concluded that you were the system's real creator. Nathan lied about your involvement in order to obtain funds. I inhaled deeply. I'm not shocked. But I'm let down. As am I, answered Camille. Threshold invested $11 million, in part on erroneous assumptions. She leaned a little forward. Ms. Whitaker, that's why I'm here. An urgent board meeting has been scheduled for tomorrow. Nathan is unaware that we are meeting, but I think it is imperative that you attend. This was not what was expecting. I had not expected a boardroom invitation, but legal negotiations. What precisely are you suggesting? I inquired warily. I'm suggesting that you be honest. Assist us in comprehending our current situation and the remaining possibilities available to us. I guarantee that your donations will be duly recognized and appreciated in exchange. I gave this some thought. Thank you for the offer, Ms. Harris, but without the appropriate legal protections, my lawyer has advised me not to deal directly with Quantum Shift. Camille, seeming unsurprised, nodded. I get it. What if your lawyer attends the meeting as well? This isn't about negotiating behind closed doors. Transparency is the key. Investors must be aware of the true situation. I hesitated, considering the dangers. I could be exposed if I went to the board meeting, but I also had the chance to talk to the people who could change the story. To finally, honestly, correct the record. At last, I responded, I'll need to speak with my attorney. Obviously. Camille got up. The time of the meeting is 10 a.m. Tomorrow. I'm hoping to run across you there. I contacted Morgan right away after she left and gave her the rundown. Morgan remarked, this is an interesting development. Earlier than I thought, but possibly very beneficial. What about our initial strategy? The official alert? That is still something we can do. Actually, before the meeting tonight, I would advise sending it. In this manner, when you enter the room, they will be aware of your legal status. Morgan promised to file the notice right away if I accepted. I didn't get much sleep that night. I had not sought for the confrontation that would occur tomorrow, but I now relish it. I had no intention of pursuing retribution. I was entering to get my name back. Nathan attempted to remove me from the narrative of Quantum Shift's triumph. I would write myself back in tomorrow, permanently this time. When I had left the Quantum Shift offices 6 weeks prior, they were precisely the same. Nevertheless, everything seemed different. Morgan was by my side as I moved through the reception area, drawing attention as we went. We followed whispers to the main meeting room down the hallway. The tension was high when we walked in. The board members, Camille Dawson, 3 additional investors, and the company's senior team were seated around the long table. At the head of the table, Nathan was noticeably missing his trademark cocky grin. The CTO, Derek, appeared to have been sleep-deprived for days. Ms. "And this must be your lawyer, Ms. Knowles," Camille remarked, getting up to welcome me, "and thank you for coming, Whitaker." Morgan put her briefcase on the table and said, "That's right," with ease. "We are here in good faith and have accepted your invitation. However, I should mention that last night we gave Quantum Shift's legal team a formal notification of the intellectual property rights that were retained." Anger made Nathan's face flush. "This is ridiculous. Your employment contract explicitly stipulates that the corporation owns all work products." "I know what I signed," I said coolly. "However, the aforementioned authentication mechanism was first created before to the start of my job. I have evidence in writing, including timestamps from the original GitHub repository." Leaning forward was one of the investors, a silver-haired man I knew as Magnitude Capital's Harold Beckett. "Nathan, is this accurate? Were you aware of this?" Nathan's face became tense. "Eliza is making false statements. Although she might have had some draft code, everything significant was created during business hours." I took my laptop out of my suitcase and plugged it into the screen in the conference room. "I would like to present some evidence, if you don't mind." Camille gave a nod. When I opened the GitHub repository, I could plainly see the commit history going back months before I had even worked at Quantum Shift. I then showed emails from my first few days at the company, exchanges with Nathan in which I made it clear that I was incorporating my own authentication system into the project. In these exchanges, Morgan seamlessly stepped in and said, "You'll notice that Mr. Merritt acknowledged Eliza's prior work, but never formalized any transfer of intellectual property rights beyond the standard employment agreement, which does not cover pre-existing work." There was silence in the room. The board members looked at each other. Nathan shifted in his chair uneasily. As I moved on to the following slide, which contained a number of screenshots taken from the Series A investor pitch deck, I added, "There's more. The authentication method is presented here as a crucial edge over competitors. However, what is my name? Not to be found." Harold Beckett scratched his temples and took off his glasses. "Nathan, you presented yourself as the technical visionary behind these systems," he replied softly. "I oversaw their growth," Nathan stated sternly. I answered, "Supervision is not creation. And your supervision mostly involved claiming responsibility for the outcomes and imposing irrational deadlines." Derek, who had been quiet up until now, opened his mouth. "Eliza was the main designer of the authentication system, and I can attest to that. We haven't been able to keep it up without her, as the previous 6 weeks have amply shown." Nathan sent Derek a homicidal glance, but it was too late. At this point, Nathan was being viewed with distrust by investors. "Ms. Whitaker, what precisely are you looking for here?" a different board member inquired. Morgan gave a firm reply. "My customer has no intention of destroying Quantum Shift. She has faith in the product that she helped create. She does, however, need 3 things: explicit protections against future misrepresentations of her work, equitable pay for her intellectual property, and appropriate acknowledgement for her achievements." What if these conditions aren't fulfilled? Nathan's voice was sharp as he challenged. Morgan stated calmly, then the notification stands. Quantum Shift will be prohibited by law from utilizing the authentication system, which will essentially make your product inoperable. That statement's weight descended like a storm cloud across the room. At the same time, everyone understood that Quantum Shift's main product, its market reputation, and its $11 million valuation were all in jeopardy. And the secret to its survival now lay with me, the engineer they had previously written off as expendable. 3 more hours were spent in the emergency board meeting. Nathan's position deteriorated with each new discovery as the debate heated up. Initially dubious of my assertions, the board members became more determined as Morgan and I presented the whole story. Harold Beckett called a recess at one point. The board met behind closed doors. Upon their return, Camille Dawson took the stage to speak to the group with a renewed sense of confidence. She stated that the board has made a number of decisions after giving them considerable thought. She looked across at Nathan. First, we are starting a leadership transition right now. We value your contribution to the founding of Quantum Shift, Nathan, but it's obvious that you oversaw some grave misrepresentations. Nathan's face went white. You're not serious. I started this business from nothing. Then Harold Beckett coldly added, with Eliza's technology. A fact that you purposefully kept hidden from us. Secondly, Camille went on, facing me, we are offering Eliza Tran the Chief Technology Officer position, with full recognition for her previous contributions and appropriate equity compensation. My heart was racing. This exceeded my expectations. Camille added, with royalties on all future revenue derived from its use, we're proposing a licensing agreement for the authentication system. Morgan and I looked at each other. This took care of almost everything we wanted. And lastly, Camille said, we're calling for a public reconciliation about the creation of Quantum Shift's fundamental technology, recognizing Eliza's function as the principal architect. Nathan got to his feet suddenly. This is an error, he yelled. You're giving the company to a person who is holding it captive. No, Nathan, I muttered. I'm not taking the business hostage. All I'm doing is making sure the truth is acknowledged. Harold Beckett gave a nod. The decision made by the board is final. You can take a smaller position as a strategic advisor, Nathan, or you can quit completely. You have an option. Nathan searched the table for allies, but he couldn't find any. He stiffened his shoulders. He hurried out of the room without saying anything more, and the door slammed behind him. I came to the realization in the ensuing silence that the vindication I experienced had nothing to do with retaliation. Justice was at issue. 3 months later, I addressed our team and a few tech journalists while standing on a small stage at Quantum Shift's headquarters. The business has experienced a dramatic change. Today is a significant milestone, I said. With the launch of our latest platform update, we're rebuilding on a foundation of openness and cooperative innovation, not just enhancing functionality. Once my own innovation, the authentication system was now managed by a whole staff of skilled engineers, each of whom was given due credit for their work. The documentation was clear and thorough. The keys were no longer in one person's possession. That was the main idea. Camille came up to me after the announcement and grinned broadly. The turnaround has impressed the investors, she remarked. We're already seeing a return of former clients, and user complaints have decreased by 87%. It's a team effort, I said, sincerely pleased with our accomplishment. True, Camille remarked, but the spark has come from your leadership. Have you heard about Nathan, by the way? I gave a headshake. He made the decision to quit the business completely. Declined the offer of an advisory position from the board. In a casual tone, she stated, he's attempting to start another startup. However, he's having trouble. In our field, word gets around quickly. For a moment, I felt sorry for them. I hope this experience teaches him something. I agree, Camille said. However, some lessons are more expensive than others. I got a surprise email later that day. From Merritt Nathan. Subject: I'm sorry. Eliza. I must apologize to you. Rather than attempting to minimize your efforts, I ought to have appreciated them. You are more suited to run the business. Nathan. I spent a considerable amount of time sitting at my desk and simply gazing at the message. I typed a response after that. Nathan. I appreciate your apology. I hope all of your future pursuits bring you success. Eliza. It had nothing to do with forgiveness. It has nothing to do with forgetting. It has to do with recognition. About sticking to the facts. A truth I had battled for and, at last, unquestionably prevailed for. I went from being erased to writing my name in bold as a result. Not out of anger or retaliation, but by sticking to my principles, refusing to back down, and allowing time to speak for itself. Your quiet can sometimes be the loudest response. Your tranquility is the most powerful move. Breathe if you're harboring anger or betrayal. Establish your limits. Make an investment in yourself. Healing is power, not weakness. Have you ever left something and returned stronger? Leave a comment with your tale. Let's communicate, encourage one another, and remind everyone that justice can occasionally whisper. But it reverberates forever.